Why do we make people famous? Why do we like so much famous people? Hi, this is Liana, Holistic Intimacy Coach. Welcome back to my channel. Here, I help you get your orgasmic intimacy. Today, we're going to get into the topic of sex symbols, people that we're attracted to that are famous, and how much headspace and brain space we actually give those people. Where is this coming from? Well, if you've seen my previous video, you know about the Andrew Huberman shebang and the disappointment that a lot of, at least women that appreciated this man from a distance, had. This entire week after I published that video with my constructive take on the situation, I was thinking about, why do we make people famous? Why do we want to like, and why do we allow ourselves to like famous people? Whether they're podcasters, actors, dancers, painters, you name it. Sometimes even news broadcasters, although, you know, those people are less attractive to, to general audiences, but who knows? Maybe a teacher, an athlete. So anybody that we consider and more people consider attractive and also good at their work, we make that person famous. We have a lot of thirst images around them in our intimate life. And whenever something happens that is revealed about them, that, you know, they're just humans, we get into this negative spiral. So what's all this dynamic? Firstly, I'm going to put a few disclaimers here. I'm not a psychologist. I'm just a coach, an intimacy coach, a sexuality coach. So I'm looking at it from this perspective, okay? What is the dynamic here? And especially, what is somebody who's trapped in such a dynamic? What can they do? I'm not a scientist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not any kind of physician. So I'm not going to look at any of that perspective. I'm just going to look at it from a very mundane perspective. Let's call it like that. Number one, why do we need to look up to sexy people? Why do we need there to be sexy people and us, men or women alike, to dream of them? Well, let's look at motivation first and foremost. A lot of us need figures that inspire us. Whether it's somebody in our circle of acquaintances, so people that we physically know and they're part of our lives in some way, or people that are not in our social circle, maybe they will never be, but we know of them. So there's a motivational aspect there in and of itself. And that is important to people. Why? Because very few people are capable, like extremely few, are capable to extract motivation only from themselves and to aspire to be a better version of themselves because they love themselves so much. And I'm not talking narcissism, okay? I'm talking healthy self-love. There are very few people that are in that space. Part of that dynamic, I think, because I'm not one of those people, okay? I too look up to, like, I've got my own people that I look up to. But I think that people that don't look up to anybody are very, very spiritual. We're talking monks, I think monks in Tibet, monks in maybe Christian religion. I don't know, I seem to be aware of a lot of abuse in the Christian religion because I'm part of it. Not so much in the Buddhism religion or tradition. So maybe there is also a filter there. However, I feel that monks and nuns on a very clean, clear, and very committed spiritual path, they are able to not develop unnecessary bonds to people that maybe they don't know. So they can extract motivation from their discipline, from their belief, from their own soul search. Let's call it like that. The rest of us mortals on the planet need inspiration. There's also a self-esteem there issue, and that's definitely part of it. But I feel that it's also a spiritual, okay, a higher than themselves matter. So that's number one. There's a motivation there. And in that perspective, people can get motivation from somebody of all ages. They don't necessarily have to be in their most fertile years. There are many people that have muses, elders, not with a sexual attraction, okay? We're still talking inspiration, okay? And motivation. So there are people that make them want to be better, but they're not necessarily in the category of very sexy and so on. Moving to the sexy category now, and you look at stars of any kind, I'm talking movie stars, porn stars, anything like that. So people that you find extremely arousing, you're sexually turned on by. First, you got to understand eros, your sexuality, your impulse. It's your life force. It's the aliveness that you get when you're turned on by somebody is most likely unbeatable. Okay, it's really hard to beat or to top that. Not even people that are in the first category, they inspire you, though they are not necessarily attracted to you, have that kind of powerful grasp on your feeling alive as the people in the second category. I'm talking for the majority of mortals on this planet, which I'm also included in. I'm no exception here. So from that perspective, somebody that, wow, makes us come alive, you can't even control that because it is uncontrollable in most cases. It's an impulse, it's an instinct, it's not rational. It just happens, and the best that you can do is manage it. So that's the explanation, first of all. That's why certain people that are successful in what they do, but they're also sexy, we will put them on a higher pedestal because they make us feel better. It's eye candy is the best way to describe this. It's still candy. It's still sugar, okay? I'm not talking sugar mamas or sugar dads or whatever. So I'm not talking sugar daddies. So I'm not talking about that. But there are still an addiction in a way, uncontrollable, that takes over our entire wiring. So that does happen, okay? I'm also subjected to that. Like, there are some men on this planet, when I see them, it's like, wow. With all the breath work that I do and all the sexuality practices, they get the best of me also. Like, gotta be honest here. Like, when some people are sexy to anybody on this planet, we react in the same way. Now, what happens, like, let's switch a bit the perspective now and look at it from that person. Okay, imagine for a second that you, the one that watching now, is that eye candy. Okay, and a lot of people find you sexy and drool whenever they see you, or salivate, in case you don't know the word. And they just want to know everything about you. They follow you. If they see you in person, they go bonkers. Some of them, even if they're married, even if they're parents or like of all ages, because that happens with mortals out there. It happens at any age. Okay, imagine all that is coming towards you. How do you feel about that? People prying into your life, stalking you maybe, or whenever they see you in public, taking photos of you. I've seen this with a lot of Asian stars. If they ever travel, there are people with turned on cell phones that film them, and those people just, the stars, they walk to, I don't know, to get checked in or something, and there are 5 or 6 people that run around them with their phones turned on, just filming them. In some cases, some of those stars, they run away from mobs of fans. Literally, it is filmed. Like, famous people there, they go to airport or wherever in a public place, they start to run because there are some crazy fans that scream and want to touch them and kiss them and whatever. What do you think that is like? Because it does happen, or people taking photos of them, or people gossiping about them, trying to find out more of their stuff, private matters. It doesn't sound very balanced, does it? That's when attractions, and we put people on a pedestal, that's when they get out of control. And they start to, the persons that are receiving this, not cool. The people that are giving this to others, not cool either. Like, it's not a happy place for any of them. I would say this dynamic, when it gets out of hand, it's one thing to be turned on, aroused, and just let that aliveness run through you and do something constructive with it. Totally different thing when it gets out of control and you can't hold it and you become obsessed about the other person. It's like, those are two different things. Sadly, that happens with a lot of people. Like, a lot of people have these unhealthy attractions, and I've also been there. Like, I'm not an exception here. I'm still a human being. When somebody takes too much free space in your mind, too much, it gets in the way of you doing your work, or you relating with people, or maybe meeting people that you can actually be intimate with in your life. True that, they're never going to be as sexy as that unattainable person somewhere out there. Okay? It's never going to be as intense. Partly because that intensity is not healthy. Okay? Your entire nervous system, if you hold on to that for too long, is going to go a bit dysregulated. Let's just call it in a very polite way. Not to mention that the quality of your life overall is going to get affected. So there's a risk at having people that are erotically turn-ons for us, and we finding them exciting, we feeling more alive at the sight of those people and daydreaming about them. There is something very unhealthy to that. It can get out of control, and that's where you become, guess what I call it? An erotic slave. That's how I coined this, erotic slave. You're not a sex slave, you're not at their whim or something. No, it's just the erotic part of you, the imagination, the inner world, is a slave to somebody that doesn't even know you, doesn't even care about you, but has somehow signed up for this dynamic. Because a lot of those people that are famous actually are aware of this dynamic. It's not healthy, but they're aware because that dynamic brings them not just attention, but they can capitalize it with money. Yes, the biggest capital on this planet is still on our sexuality because it's the one that makes us feel the most alive. You got to understand that. And the best way to capitalize on that for anybody, when I'm talking the best, I'm talking the healthiest. The best way to capitalize on this is to build yourself in such a way that you're very, very attractive, not to the wide audiences, but to the one in real life that you want to have as partner. Okay? So you become sexually or erotically inspiring to the one that sexually or erotically inspires you. I think that is the only way that we win with this dynamic. Okay? The only way we capitalize with somebody that we can actually have a relationship with, so somebody that we know in our circle, somebody that we feel not inferior or superior to, and very much with having teammates in a relationship, not leaders and followers. So I think that is the best way in which we can capitalize on this. However, there are very few people that invest time, energy, mind space, effort, and resources of all kinds to become in such a place, okay? To become equally or compatibly attractive from all perspectives. Like, they feel that way, they look that way, they behave that way, they think that way. You know, it's all integrated. So very few people invest in becoming this. Most people just most people invest in salivating after others, okay? So becoming erotic slaves for others. There's a few number of people, or a less number or smaller number of people, that is the one in the leadership role. There aren't many leaders out there. That's the hierarchical approach, which it underlies also this dynamic, doesn't allow for, there's very few at the top and many at the bottom. Okay, but there's even fewer that invest in themselves. That is the rarity, and I think that's the dynamic or the way out of it. Where do I come from with this entire video and expose? From the Andrew Huberman shebang, and a lot of realizations that I've also had, because I too appreciated this man. Not necessarily as a thirst thing, because he's physically not my type, but I did appreciate him for the stuff that he was sharing and the integrity that he was showing from my perspective. Me not being a scientist. After watching the whole, reading the article, feeling that it shouldn't have been stuff that I needed to know about, but still I learned of it. It had an impact on me, not a good one, I'll be honest. And I was thinking, this is what happens to a lot of people when we invest too much authority into somebody. And then we find out these people are just people, just people like everybody else on the planet. We get not only disillusioned, but sometimes, so depending on what happens, some people can take it in a very, very negative way. Like in the specific case of the Andrew Huberman episode, shebang, there are many women that were triggered because there are a lot of guys that do this. Okay? They feign being their partners and just their partners, and then behind the back, they just go with 1, 2, or maybe more people. A lot of women were triggered by this. Not necessarily to the point of calling it, although I have seen some videos of women insulting this guy flat out. And those were women of a much older age that had been through a lot of that stuff. And I can understand when you see somebody that you respect, you follow up to for health advice, and then something like this comes up. Totally, totally triggering for a lot of women. I, as a woman, was like, wow, disappointed, because here's a guy that is working into himself and inspiring so many others, but then does this kind of crap, which I don't think that's optimal. Obviously, even his followers, that some of his followers that actually have a bit of reasoning, they also say that's not cool. Cheating, not being upfront with who you are, what you want, not cool at all. Like even men said that. Just be upfront. Okay? And it isn't easy to be upfront with these kinds of things. It does take a lot of optimization and character. However, I'm looking at it from the perspective of people that get disappointed, or people that are entrapped. This is the case of men. They thirst for women, like they see porn. I'm not in the OnlyFans community, not gonna ever be there, not interested. However, I do know the kind of entrapment that is, basically. I'll put it in it's a thirst trap. Let's call it like that. And how drained a lot of those guys are, how little energy they have to go after quality relationships in their lives. Okay, so it does, like erotic slaves, like I'm putting it like this. Erotic slaves. This is a dynamic that we at least need to be aware of if you want to have a chance at changing it. It's not easy to change, okay? It is so hardwired into us. Most of us need others to feel alive, to feel motivated, to want to start bettering our lives. It's super, super hard to do that just on your own. It's super hard and super rare. But if we want to have a chance at improving ourselves, not be erotic slaves, just be erotic sovereigns, we need to be at least aware of this. The changing of it, my take, like I said earlier, the best way to go about it is when you start to invest in yourself to become equally inspirational to the person that inspires you. Can you get there? I don't know, because there are some things that we can't change about ourselves, physical things. With all the plastic surgery and all of that, some things we just can't change about our bodies. And we need to accept that one also. And there is a big component of being an erotic slave to somebody else is the physical appearance and the physicality of how those people are. So that's why I'm talking about aspiring to be better, we're still going to be, we're still going to win something out of this if we do that, even if we're not going to get to the same level of attractiveness as the people we look up to. That's how I went or got out of that negative spiral. Okay, because I too, there were a lot of men on this planet that I, wow, allowed so much free space in my head, more than needed. When I started to work on myself, and there are limitations, there are some things that I just can't change about myself, no matter how much I try, like those are given and I need to accept them. But I started working on myself as much as I could to not be a neurotic slave. So this is where I come from. This is why I feel we look up to those people. We put them on a pedestal because we're not capable 100% to draw inspiration from us and to show up as equals. This has got to be said. A lot of us are wired to be lower, and it takes a lot of work from us. And when I'm saying that we are wired to be on a lower level, it's also social conditioning, it's also mindset, it's also what we see in our families, how we're brought up. So there's a combination there. And there's also something non-scientifically called hot blood or stamina. Some people just have it, some people just don't have it. That's in your temperament. So there's a combination there when I say that we're wired to be on a lower level. However, we can still grow out of it and learn to think in a different way, envision ourselves and the rest of the people in a different way. Okay, so change the dynamic which we're having right now with certain people, and let's just say it, with the rest of the world also. Not easy, but doable. So I would love to know what you think of this, not necessarily of somebody that you've noticed that you have this dynamic with, but what of this dynamic, if you've noticed it, and if you have or are trying to change it. I'd love to know. See you in the next video. Bye.